are recording now. So thank you, Henry, for having the time and joining the conversation. And just a little, I'm going to give a little bit of introduction about who you are to the audience. Henry is a co-founder of CTI, Coaching Training Institute organization, which is one of the well-known organization for leadership development and coaching around the world. And also Henry is a co-author for several books, Coactive Coaching, Coactive Leadership, and The Stake. And really great having you, Henry. So I want to start off with a quick question is, how do you view the world nowadays that we are going through?
Well, going through with this pandemic and all the other things that are happening, is that right?
Yes.
It's a remarkable period in terms of the pause, I would call the pause that everyone is in. And it offers some time for, in my mind, it offers some serious time for reflecting about what's working and what's not working in the world. And particularly for leaders, it offers a time in our world of training coactive leaders and leaders who want to shift the paradigm from a sort of a perspective of fear and that to a perspective of loving each other and loving your neighbors and loving, the world. It's a time to really look at what it is that needs to happen, that we need to do, what we need to do to prepare ourselves, and also what we need to do to prepare our communities and our world for switching that paradigm, because that paradigm is no longer sustainable. It's ultimately going to destroy us, the paradigm of fear and anger and all that, and war and conflict. And it's just, we need to move out of that paradigm. And this time offers us a chance to really examine what it is we need to do to shift that paradigm.
And now we've read and we've seen literature talking about pause, as you mentioned, for the leaders, and why it's important for leaders to have a pause in their life or in their time and in their perspectives. I'd say.
Well, for leaders and for just any general human beings, the pause is really important because we get so busy doing what we've been doing, and we get so busy being run by the influences that have determined our lives that we sort of, without the pause, we don't have a chance to reflect and to look at what is it that is, what are the things I'm blind to that are running me that I can't do now because, or I can't live from right now because of the situation I'm in. And how do I get rid of those things? How do I get those things out of the way so that I can really do what I want to do in the world? So the pause for all human beings is a really important part of, living your life on purpose and living a meaningful life, because like Kevin Cashman wrote a book called The Pause. He's one of the people that endorsed our books too. He's a great book about pause is so essential. It's just that pausing is essential, and sort of Mother Nature has given all of us on your earth a big pause right now.
Yes, indeed. So, and now you mentioned the purpose, and that it looks like that every human needs a purpose to live in. Do we have to know it to live it, or we can live it without even knowing it?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
I believe, this is firmly my belief, is that the purpose is like the river of meaning through our lives. It's like and we're riding that river. We're on that river, and we're riding that river, whether we're conscious of it or not. I think personally, it's useful to become more and more conscious of that river we're riding, so that we can turn the boat in the direction of the river rather than sort of bump into the shore all the time, making mistakes, so that we can start to flow in the same direction as the purpose is moving, through our lives. And so you don't need to be conscious of it, and it will keep working you. And I think when you are conscious of it, it helps you to sort of steer yourself as you're moving along through life.
Yeah. So even now, when we mention a pandemic and all other stuff that going on, if we change perspective of looking at things that are going on, what we can see something hopeful out of it.
I think what we're starting to see, it's sort of a paradox in a way, because the more hopeless and crisis oriented it gets, the more, because it's a huge crisis, and it's not just, it's a human crisis. It's all human beings on the planet are experiencing this at the same time. It's not like wars, which tend to be localized and things like that. This is a crisis that is global, and affects all human beings. And so, and at the same time, without a crisis, without that kind of edge, it's very hard to evolve. Evolution doesn't happen if things are moving along smoothly. There's no reason for anything to evolve, change, or transform. So we need to have a little crisis. And I think humanity is having the crisis it needs, and it's already starting to cause change. You know, in the U.S. here, you're seeing, in some other places, you're seeing stuff about racism that is changing unlike it's ever been before. You know, it's like we've always had it, but there's always been sort of a way that it's been tamped down, and it's not being tamped down now. So that's rising. And I think there's other things that are going to rise out of this crisis that are going to also become more crisis oriented themselves a little bit. And then they're going to be exposed, and we're going to open our consciousness up to them. And I think this period of time, I think in addition, in the pause and in the reflection time, is consciousness opening time. And it's like, let's get more and more conscious of our world. I'm hoping that one of the things that will happen, it's happening sort of without us even being aware of it, but the environment is improving, because we're not driving as many cars. We're not, like, things are like things that are happening in our world. I mean, I saw something a couple of weeks ago about people in India, northern India, are seeing Mount Everest for the first time in 50 years.
Wow.
The fog has cleared. The smog is clearing, you know. So, and there's animals that are wandering through city streets now, you know, stuff like that. So because we aren't out.
Yeah.
You know,
this is really a great perspective to look at things, that we need sometimes crisis if we look at it either at a humanity level or even at a society level or individual level, to create that deep shift and change. And nowadays they are saying the world after COVID will not be the same as before. So the question is, how it's going to look like?
Well, that's what we're in right now. It's so interesting because it could look one of two ways, depending on leadership and who's in the world. It could look a bad way, and it could look a good way. It's not going to look the same. Things could get to a place where where people start defending their homes or worrying about other people, or when in a fear-based world, the crisis can lead to destruction. And life-diminishing stuff that takes away life. And in some of the governments, you're seeing them run by folks that are actually diminishing life right now. The other side of it is that the people are wanting it to go the other way, wanting it to go to life affirming and golden rule, love your neighbor, that kind of thing. And even the protests that are happening in the U.S. and around the world right now in different places are much more peaceful and consistently peaceful. And who's looking bad in them is the authorities, not the protesters, And so it's an interesting time to realize that we are in this crisis. We could go one of two ways. And my hope is that we go this way, and that we're generating leadership and leaders and creating people who are going to land on the other side of this pandemic and say, okay, we're not going to do, the world is not the same anymore. How are we going to create this world? Are we going to give in to our fears, or are we going to start, taking care of each other and taking care of our planet?
Is this like confirming that at humanity level, that from generation to another generation, that we are shifting consciousness for humanity?
I feel that way. I feel that the people I'm looking around, the people I'm talking to on Zoom and other places, I'm feeling the nature of the conversation is shifting more and more rapidly than I've ever heard it before. What I'm reading and what I'm starting to see more and more and more is, I started to see it about 10 years ago, and when I started reading some of the articles in Harvard Business Review and other places, where they were saying, they were starting to throw around words like love, as a positive thing for businesses to pay attention to. It's like, and I said, wow, this is amazing. Harvard, Forbes and Harvard Business Review are writing all this stuff. And I'm starting to see that show up in corporations, organizations, and other places. And I'm really starting to feel it in the community that I'm working with around the globe. Looking at how do we shift to a love-based paradigm rather than a fear-based paradigm, and that's the evolution. That's the change that is happening. It's happening now.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. Yeah, and even actually now I'm seeing it also myself. Now when I go out of my, let's say, circle to people in a corporate or any other institution, that this type of language is now they are becoming familiar with it, and it's not weird anymore that to have the fluffy or emotional conversation to happen, which is great. And also now going to this, like a consciousness or conscious leaders, there is another let's say part of the world or of the side that are saying, what is conscious leader is he or she the one who who loved their neighbors and wanted everyone happy without making any decisions, or they are firming, taking decisions and moving forward without listening to others? So what is it, that conscious human or leader?
Well, in our philosophy about leadership, we believe that everyone is a leader. And every human being has that potential, has that being in them of a leader. And in order for that to happen, they have to operate from they have to be aware of different parts or different kinds of leadership that exist. Because everyone's not always the leader that's, out in front making things happen, creating vision. Sometimes they're the leader actually by empowering that, or being this person that serves that person in front, and really a powerful leader, of a servant leader, and sometimes they're really powerful leader, it's just within themselves. Sometimes the leader, just to get myself, loving myself, accepting myself, and knowing myself, and then operating from that self-authority, choosing my steps, choosing what I'm going to do rather than being in reaction all the time, is a form of leadership that many people need to learn how to do. Most human beings aren't functioning from that place of self-acceptance and self-authority. They're functioning from a place of victim, to the circumstances. And so I think once people start accepting themselves and choosing, making choices in their life, then they can start to choose different ways to lead. So one of the ways to lead is to get in front, to have a clear vision and get in front and talk to people and make sure that they are following behind, and keeping the conversation going as you're moving towards this hopefully life-affirming vision. And then another way is to really to be able to open your senses up and really be able to listen to sort of the energetic field, what's going on in the spaces, what's happening, and how do I take responsibility for that as well as the people and the things, in the space. And once leaders can start to do that, and you've seen leaders that we've all seen leaders that where we've been in a group, a large group of people, and there's someone on the stage talking to us, and it feels like they're talking straight to us.
Mm.
And that's a leader who is aware not just of the people, but of the space itself, the space, the energetic field, whatever you want to call it, that's going on. And that when we can tune that ability in people, wow, are we in good shape? You know?
Yeah. That's beyond what we see physically, let's say,
Yes.
and go beyond that. So now I know that the definition of leadership is the person who's taking responsibility of their life. So
For their world.
For their world. So
Right.
how can now we know that making an impact and taking responsibility for this?
Could you say that again? Could you ask that question again?
Yeah, I mean, now as a leader, now he is who taking responsibility of his world. The question is now we know that everyone can make an impact, either positive or negative or anything.
Yes.
And how can we, if we make an impact, taking responsibility for it? Is it to take care of what the reaction of people towards my action, or how can I understand that responsibility? What does it mean?
That goes back to your. In some ways, I think that goes back to your consciousness around my purpose and consciousness around what is it that gives me meaning in life, and what is it that sort of. So there's that level of consciousness. In other words, like if I'm clear on my purpose and that my actions are purpose driven, and I personally believe that purpose is not something that is related to good or bad. It's related to like affirming. I think we're here. We are life. We are alive. We are whatever we are is born into this physical reality called life.
Yeah.
And I think all purposes affirm life. It's like we didn't come here just to die. We came here to live, and we came here to have other things live around us and be alive. And so I think all purposes are life affirming. I think moving in a direction of life affirming life is what purpose does. Now, I think some people lose track or lose consciousness of that purpose, and they start doing things what I would call ego-based, or trying to look good or get it right or be approved of, or all of those kind of things. And that often takes people on a track other than life affirming.
Yeah.
It takes people in life diminishing or controlling or dominating tracks, right?
Yes.
Because they are using that ego to get what that ego needs, not to affirm life.
Yeah. And that is not flowing with the purpose, the ego with it. Yeah. So now with everything going around us, so how can we stay hopeful?
I think that when you're in touch with life and nature and sky and earth, and that you realize how vast it is, how big it is, how incredible it is, how beautiful it is. And I think how we stay positive is we have to keep remembering that that's what we're after. We're after this we're heading for, and we're after this sort of wonderful, beautiful expression of being alive in the world and being alive in a live world, and so I think that it's. I might be losing your question, but I think the part that struck me when you said it is just that I can't imagine not being hopeful when I'm focused on the tree that's outside my window.
Okay.
I can't imagine not being hopeful when I'm in touch with the earth and in touch with people living on it and doing it. And I can't imagine being hopeful if I can see a seed turn into a sprout, turn into a tree, or a baby being born. Like, how can you look at a baby being born and not feel hopeful? It's like look in their eyes and just see their face and go, oh my gosh, whoa.
Yeah. Like like magic is happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is really amazing to look at life and the world, specifically in the time of civilization, that we lost connection with nature, lost connection with the sky, with the Mother Earth, with the tree.
We lost connection with our own bodies.
Yeah.
No, which is of nature. You know, it's like we've lost connection. We so separated ourselves even from our own bodies, as well as separating ourselves from all that stuff you're talking about. It's like, there's this thing that happened in history. Historically, you brought up history. There's some decision that got made, 6,000 to 10,000 years ago, that the way to organize ourselves, because we've gotten into larger communities and stuff, and the only way that you could organize large communities of people was to dominate them, was to have some sort of hierarchical situation where you dominated the people below. And that domination then applied to everything. We had to dominate nature. We had to dominate, we had to be in charge. We had to control, dominate, those kind of things.
Yeah.
And what we're finding is those kind of things no longer work. It's like those kind of things are actually killing us. They're actually life diminishing ultimately. So we have to move back into some sort of partnership, both partnership with ourselves, reconnecting our heads to our bodies, and reconnecting ourselves to nature and reconnecting ourselves to that, because the domination and control is no longer working.
Yeah. And being in the pause that it will help us to connect to ourselves, to our body, to the nature.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
Don't you think that's one of the great opportunities is to pause? And one of the first places I'm looking at with all of my clients right now is much deeper, looking at purpose, looking at their personal philosophies, what it is, who it is they are, what they believe. In other words, connecting this head with the rest of myself. Who is this person's body? Then looking at, okay, now what's my meaningful connection to this world?
Yeah. So now I'm really now thinking of people in corporate or in a context of organization.
Yeah.
They are saying, yes, we would love to do such thing, to be conscious in our workplace. But the question is, if we don't have the authority, what is the responsibility that we have to create this consciousness for meaningful? That's
a great question, and I think that's a lot of the corporate culture or the organizational culture is one of the cultures that is most in need of healing.
Yeah.
There's lots of cultures that are in need of healing, but that culture is such a pyramidal, top-down dominating culture that it really needs to be affected, because everyone's a victim in it.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And in most of them, now there's some that are doing some remarkable things. There's some changes happening in those cultures, which is great. However, I think that where the healing needs to begin is with the individual. And it's internally getting it. How do you get people in touch with that leader within that we were talking about earlier, that that self-acceptance and self-authority, so that, and then to move into their, like, how do I get them to not be coming out of a reactive place and get them coming from a place of choice, so they can actually not automatically react to things, but choose things based on reflection, based on, what it is that they know will move their purpose forward, themselves forward, while at the same time maintaining their job and in their environment that they're in. And so, but that can only happen with an opening up consciousness. If I'm in my tight little world, just doing my little job all the time, I can't do that. I just have to stay in victim mode.
Yeah, and this is fascinating to know. Like, they have to go against what they've been taught all the years, how to behave in a context of organization or senior people or other people. Like, now we are inviting them to, or the invitation is for individual to be vulnerable.
But to be what?
To be vulnerable.
Yes, yes.
and open up and share his or her thoughts, feeling towards what's going on around them, which is
Well, and they won't be able to do that if they're still in victim mode.
yeah.
You know, if they're in a place of choice, if they're at a place of, if we can move people from, open their consciousness up enough to get to a point where they can start to see that they're in reaction most of their life. They're reacting to things, usually from their ego or from learned pattern behaviors, which is what you're talking about. You're talking about, we learn how to do it right, or toe the line, or get the good grade, or get the bigger paycheck, or get the promotion. All those different things. We set up our brain and our synapses to support that movement, so that we don't have to think about it much. We just are doing those things. So we have to get conscious that we've done that. First thing we have to do is we have to get conscious that we have created these sort of synaptical pathways where we're absolutely putting ourselves in the same place over and over again. And once we realize that, then we can start actually managing those reactions. We can start to shift them. Well, a lot of science has found out that those neurons and synapses are actually plastic. They're movable. You can change the pathways. You can change the patterns in people's brains. And so, well, that's what we're doing, aren't we?
Yes.
We're at a certain level, we're changing those patterns so that we're moving from just automatic reactiveness to one of, oh, I'm fine. I can make a choice. I can actually be conscious of the different places. And in order to keep my job, I may need to choose to do certain things certain ways, because that's what people really need to have happen.
Exactly.
But I'm choosing it, and I can make other choices as well, as opposed to I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do, you know?
Yeah.
Because, and who then is in charge? Who then is the authority? Is me. It's not someone over me, on top of me, you know?
Yeah. Although they are in a hierarchy, higher, it doesn't mean that they have the authority over my choices.
They think they do.
Yes.
You know, because they're a dominator. They you know, and someone has control over them, and so on, up the line. However, if I'm really in charge, if I'm really making choices, if I'm really in choice, I'm accepting of myself, and I want to be in this environment, I want to be in this job or this whatever I'm in, then, and I'm making choices, then I'm the authority. I'm actually choosing to do what is being asked of me, or I'm not. And if I'm not, I'm willing to be fired. You know, I'm choosing to get another job, or I'm choosing, you know, it's like, but I become the authority then, rather than I become the victim of some sort of control.
Yeah, it's really interesting that how we see culture is the most important part that need to be healed, while it's the first thing that people actually not looking at it, or not giving it any importance of their when they wanted to change.
Right.
When they want to change, they just go to strategy, or going to a KPI or processes, and forgetting the most important thing, which is culture, that relating to human and people.
Well, and the culture changes that most companies try to do, they try to do through a domination and control kind of way. Like, let's do this new idea, this new strategy. Now everyone do this, you know?
Yes.
And if you're not working on the individual and finding their self-authority, then you can't, it's very difficult to work on the culture itself, looking for that same thing, that same self-acceptance and self-authority, and then looking for ways to have leadership show up. You know, because then all of a sudden what you have is a corporation full of leaders who have brilliant ideas, who can actually make much more success out of the company and what they're doing than you know, automatons or workers, or you know, worker bees, you know.
Yeah.
And it's
that's yeah, it's fascinating to see this. So while now we are heading towards the end, I want to go back and ask you, Henry, for what is your philosophy of life? How do you see life right now, or life in general?
Wow, what is my philosophy of life? Well, I see, what I see is I see life as vibrant, rich, beautiful. I see it as a creative and moving and adjusting and collaborating system. You know, it's like life. I don't see it as a world of only the fittest survive, and everyone else gets wiped out. And I don't see life that way. I see life much more as a continually creatively shifting and changing based on the needs of life, based on what's needed by the life in us and in our world around us. And what I believe in terms of my responsibility towards that is that I think that I have to stay in conversations like this one, and stay in conversations with other people, and be and not lose my connection or my relationship to my world and my land and my air and my water and all those different wonderful elements that make us up and make our world up, and do my best to make that better. So to do my best to improve life, rather than do my best to just get what I want. I sort of like getting what I want is old news for me. I've still gotten everything I wanted, and I only get what I want better when I'm looking to grow life.
Well, like looking at life like this, or making it better by connecting to it and looking at it like rich.
Like my wife would say, it's all about love. It's all about relationship. It's all about, it's my relationship to myself, my relationship to nature, my relationship to others, my relationship to my world, my relationship to my universe, my cosmos, my God, my whatever it is like all of that is what life's about, is being in relationship,
Yeah. So going to last question is, what tips or advice that you want to give to individual to hold and to reflect on?
Wow. I love I love what Jonathan, I love what what's his name, the story, the hero's journey guy, Joseph Campbell. What Joseph Campbell said, and that is, follow your bliss. I think that it's like when we are in touch with what fills us with joy, fills us with love, fills us with gratitude, we want to keep going in that direction. We don't want to go in the other direction. We want to go in that direction. So I think following your bliss is the most powerful tool there is, and most powerful tip that there is in the world, is to follow your bliss, and open your consciousness up to being aware of your world and your purpose and all the stuff we've been talking about in this conversation, because the more conscious we are, the more able we are to interact with the complexities and the beautiful complexities of life.
Yes.
And which I think is great.
This is amazing. Thank you very much, Henry, for this really rich conversation.
Morowan, thank you for the question.
And for me, it's as always that when I have a conversation with you, is always informative and enriching my consciousness and awareness, and really appreciating this. So thank you for the time and all the advice and conversation.
My pleasure, Morowan. Anytime.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
You too. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.